Welcome to the Family Photography Marketing Podcast, where we dive into the world of marketing and help you take your business to the next level. I'm your host, Fiona, a marketing expert with 10 years of experience in the family photography industry, and in each episode of this podcast, I'll be sharing my insights and strategies for successful marketing to help you navigate the ever-changing landscape of digital and traditional marketing techniques. So whether you're just starting out or looking to fine-tune your marketing approach, this podcast has something for you. So join me and let's get started. Hello, everyone. So what I need to stop doing is saying things like, I'm going to start doing 2 episodes a week and then going into a really busy season of mentoring and not being able to do any episodes at all. So I think the rule I'll make for myself is that I'm going to try my very best to show up once a week. And if 2 times a week happens, that's good too. So if you guys were waiting for an episode, I do apologize. All right. So, there, you get to hear, I'm just going to leave Rooney in here because if I re-record, I'll just be annoyed. Okay. So what we're going to talk about today is one of the biggest sabotagers for spring sessions that I'm seeing. And that is people are going quiet. One, because they feel like poo, which I totally understand being in the Pacific Northwest in January. I am so sad all the time because it never stops raining and we get 6 minutes of daylight and everything looks soggy and my shoes are probably wet and I just can't get myself out of a hole in this month. And I forget it every year. Every year I'm like, January, new me. And then it's like, January's freaking sad me. So it's very difficult to market your business on a good day. And it's extremely difficult to market your business on a sad girl day. So what I want you to lean into is automation right now. And I don't want you to do automation forever because then what happens is people get into systems and they just start rolling forward and they're not really paying attention to the data because in their mind, they're like, oh, I checked my marketing box, so I'm done. So I just shared this. I know I got rid of my Instagram subscription, but I started a broadcast channel and there's no selling or anything in there. It's just tips that I find. So it was like congregated in one spot. So if you want to join it, it's on my Instagram. And the latest one I found, and this is just like a jumping off point of an idea. So if you use a Linktree, which we've gone back and forth about what's better to use when you're linking from your Instagram, should you use a page that's just a page on your website that's links, or should you use a Linktree? And either one is fine. They both have benefits and drawbacks. So many people, when they use a page on their website, if you do that, you need to be very, very cognizant that you are not sending people then away from your website. Because I've said this before, but people come from Instagram, they come into your links page. If you're sending them to like a booking page that's through like Session or a booking situation that is not embedded in your site, embedded, like if you want to see an example of an embedded scheduler, I just did a blog post on my blog, Fiona Margo Photography, about a mountain session that I shot actually back in 2018. I'm just talking about how long I've been shooting the mountains and blah, blah, blah. And at the bottom, one of the reasons I use Acuity is I can embed a scheduler right in the blog post. And I like that because as someone is reading through and they're like, oh, these are so pretty, I would love to do this. They get to the bottom and they can actually see my active availability and book right there, but they're not bouncing over to another site because I know that there's a chance that I might lose them. So if you have a links page and you're sending them to like session.com to book, that's a high bounce rate and you will be punished from Google because Google will say, oh, people are arriving on this site and immediately literally bouncing out. And so that's a warning to them that the site didn't meet the consumers or the whoever it was looking's needs. So it's not a quality retrieval on the Google site. So that's the drawback of having a page that's a links page. Just make sure that all of those links go internally, ideally on a clear path, which is what we talk about all the time. The little potential client, stomp, stomp, stomp down the path. We want them to keep stomping towards the booking page. We don't want them to get confused or overwhelmed or sidetracked. That's the main goal. if you're using Linktree, I used to be a link page girly on my website, and I switched back to Linktree because they do seem fairly committed to pretty good features. So as the podcast person side, they automatically pull in all my latest podcast episodes. Like, so if you go to my Linktree, you'll see my podcast at the top and there's a little drop down and it literally links to all the podcast episodes. That is work that I just 1000% know I would fall off with. And I was trying to do that before. I was, instead of just first of all, it's confusing as a podcast episode person or podcast host. Surprisingly, a podcast host is not called a podcast episode person. But what I was doing before was I was like, oh, I need to link my latest episode on Spotify and Apple Podcast and Stitcher and all of these different, there's so many ways people listen, and now Linktree does that for me. So I really like that. And the latest thing they just released is that you can schedule things. And so you could base your entire booking process, like obviously for every single person who I mentor, I really try to push them to seasonal booking. And the reason for that is because it's so much easier to see your year in seasons than see your year as one giant overwhelming chunk. So let's say you're booking spring, which is what the majority of people are kind of aiming towards, especially as we're, thawing out from winter. If you went into Linktree and you pre-scheduled all of your booking releases and then you built your content backwards from that, that would actually be a really great way to get in the habit of thinking of your business in that seasonal bucket where you're like, here's spring, here's what I want to shoot. I'm working backwards from those sessions and creating the content that I know I need to put out in the world. Hopefully, not just on Instagram, but maybe even out in the world. But on this case, we're talking about Instagram because we're talking about the Linktree. So then you could say, okay, I know my link to book is going live on this date because I already said it. And then we can go back to our other marketing trick that's super helpful, which is we keep the promises we set to ourselves. And that is like the most transformational mindset shift you will have in marketing. It's not about having branding that's super on point. It's not about finding the best font. It's not about it's not about followers. It's not about likes. That is not what marketing means. What marketing means to me is that you have created a marketing plan that's strategic and you actually follow through with it. So these types of automation tools can really help. And if you think about further automation, now again, I don't want you to become an over automated robot to the point where your marketing is like, you're not even thinking about it. Obviously, if you're really busy, your marketing is going to go on the back burner. And so then you can step in and use automation again. But let's use this Linktree idea. You set your session date to go live, so you have the deadline. It's almost like you're working at any job. Like you have an assignment deadline and you need to have all your shite done before that deadline. That means you need your marketing material. That means you need to know where you're shooting. Any pain points that a potential client might have, you need to know where you're talking about it and how often. Once you gather that bucket of information, it can be tied to this date that you know is going live on your Linktree as the new booking update, and you can even do a little build up to it, right? So a lot of people will do that with their email addresses or their email lists, and they'll say, these are going live to my email subscribers first, join the email list. It's that same sort of like build up that gets a little bit of excitement going. So when we find little ways like that we can create marketing structure around, I think that those are really, really beautiful and beneficial to a lot of the ways that our brains work, which often are sort of creative and flowy, and it's hard to lock our own selves down into doing the actual work of marketing. So I am now in week 2 of the mastermind, and it's just been so fascinating to learn so much about everyone's business. I basically have a notebook with a page of notes on everyone's business, and everyone's doing pretty much different stuff. And so they've all picked what they're focusing on, because what I decided, this was the first time I'm doing this type of teaching, is that one thing that was missing when everyone signed up is that I want them to actually be working towards a tangible offer. So this is what I'm offering, and then we can do that work of building backwards from that. So everyone pretty much has a different offer, and the best part has been seeing the light bulb come on to this idea of creating a pathway to booking. So often our brands are presented in a way that actually puts way too much effort on the potential client side in terms of searching out exactly what we're booking right now. And you would think that like, oh, these consumers are so internet savvy. No, they are not. They are internet lazy. That's what, and they have an attention span of -1 second. So we need to literally we need to hold their little hand as they trot down the path, looking at our beautiful images that are what they're interested in. They're getting helpful tips from their own pain points. They're learning about us as the artist and how we will help them. And then they arrive on the silver platter of, okay, you made it this far, my small child. Now, here you go. You can book. Like, that is literally what we have to do. And is it annoying? Sure. But it's also so worth it. And so seeing all of these students realize that even if their branding was on point, even if their website was good, even if no matter what was going on, for vast majority of them, there was still clarity that was missing, that was needed. And adding that in is often fairly simple. It doesn't necessarily take that much work. It's just thinking like a potential client and coming to your own brand and seeing where people get hung up. So anyway, if you are feeling like you might need a deadline or a push, I would pick these dates that you want to launch things or release things, and then work your very hardest during these sad times of dreariness, especially if you're in the Pacific Northwest, to actually do the steps you need to do to release those dates when you said that you would, and to market the amount of times you said that you would, and to show your face the amount of times you said you would, and to reach out into your people in your local town like you said you would. And I know that it's harder to do that than it is to say it, but it is vital because, like I said in the beginning of the episode, what I see too often is that, you're just coming off of fall, so everyone is exhausted. And everyone's portfolio looks like fall still, because many people haven't posted anywhere on their website or any updates, nothing. It's just fall and what has been, and then there's just silence. And now this is the last day of January. And so spring will be here before you know it. So the work still needs to be going on the back end, and you can automate as much of it as you can. But what happens is that then the first spring flower springs up from the ground, and you and your clients both think, wow, I want to get outside and look how pretty the flowers are. But by then, if you haven't done anything, your portfolio still looks like fall. A client's not going to come in and say, oh, she's all ready for me. She's all ready for these spring sessions. I know exactly how to get in touch with her, what's offered, where the locations are, how she'll help me style, all the different things. If your brand was already, if you're using these months to set it up to look like a freshly born spring baby of a brand, and they can fall into that and just fall in love with the flowers outside and then see how they can get on your spring calendar, that work is so vital. Because then what happens if you don't do that is this crazy scramble where you're like, oh my gosh, I see the flowers too. Let me throw something together. And then you're only able to talk about it about 2 times before all the flowers are gone. Or you're just like, some people have some crazy fall or spring situations where they have blossoms that they regularly use for literally 2 weeks. Like there's different trees and different things that people use in their marketing, and they love these spring sessions. Now is the time to build the foundation for those. Don't get caught up in the scramble because you're silenced by your own sadness. And so as someone who is in the thick of it, I want to recognize that it's hard, but also give you a little nudge to do some of that work now, because you won't regret it. And even if you don't end up booking anything, you will have created a lot of momentum for yourself going into the next season. And you can just take that same idea and move it to summer, and then take that same idea and move it to fall. So it's trusting yourself as the marketer of your own business. And the only way you can do that for a lot of people, just the way our human brains work, is to work off a deadline. So circling all the way back, if you want to use Linktree and say my link is going live on this day, I know that I have that amount of time to do the work I need to do to make sure that if someone were to click that link, they would be well supported, well educated, and ready to book those sessions. So I hope that was helpful, and I will see you guys next week.